Hey guys, tonight we slip back into a time of long ships and war cries, where the scent of pine smoke clings to your hair and the air carries the salt of the fjord. You're standing in a cold hall lit by flickering flames, a heavy drinking horn in one hand and a blade at your hip. Around you, bearded warriors laugh too loudly, slap backs too hard, and swear loyalty through clenched teeth. It smells of mead, sweat, and blood memory. You're not just here to drink, you're here to swear. This is a blot, a feast of sacrifice, both animal and vow. As your chieftain raises his horn, you mimic him, throat dry despite the drink, because this moment binds you, not just in ceremony, but in survival. You lift your horn and speak words that feel older than the language itself. Swear loyalty, swear brotherhood, swear vengeance on any who betray. It's all very moving. Until you realize there's no such thing as an exit clause. Vikings didn't just value loyalty. They forged it like iron, tested it like hulls in storm surf, and punished its absence with almost poetic violence. And these oaths weren't whispered in private. No, they were public, loud, messy, mead sloshing, dogs barking, everyone watching. Once you swore, the entire hall owned your promise, and if you ever dared betray it, well, let's just say, your bones might end up as part of a longhouse foundation. Now, to be fair, not every Viking had a perfect record. Historians still argue whether some famous betrayals were planned acts or chaotic accidents, like that time Hastein tricked the Italians into thinking he was dead and got carried into a church in a coffin. Smart? Yes. Betrayal? Depends on how you define guessed. But the average Viking wasn't looking for clever. He was looking for certain. Loyalty began at the mead horn. Drinking together was sacred, almost liturgical. You didn't just get drunk, you got aligned. The mead was brewed strong, and maybe with herbs you shouldn't ask too many questions about. With every gulp, you reaffirmed unspoken contracts. Eye contact mattered. You laughed at the right stories. You joined in the boasts, even if yours were mildly exaggerated. If you're lucky, someone even claps you on the back hard enough to knock you forward into the fire pit. That's affection. But the real ceremony came when the toasts turned to blood oaths. Here's where things got serious. You might slice your palm and press it to another's. You might smear it on a blade. In rarer, grimmer cases, you might each drop blood into the same drinking horn and pass it around. A little gross? Absolutely. But this wasn't about hygiene. It was about belonging. After this, if someone laid a hand on your blood brother, they laid a hand on you. If he bled, you bled. If he asked you to burn a village, you grabbed the nearest torch. And if he ever turned against you, you'd be expected to carve your way through him like he was last week's mutton. In some regions, especially what's now Iceland, oath-breaking had layered penalties, fines, land seizure, even outlaw status. But in the tighter clans, in the dark, pine-walled corners of Norway's valleys, justice was more informal. A whispered accusation could see you dragged from your bedding at midnight, tied up with eel-skin cords, they don't stretch, by the way, and tossed into the fjord with a prayer stone in your mouth to keep your tongue silent. Still think betrayal sounds like a fun side quest? One quirky note. Some Vikings swore oaths over sacred rings, arm rings usually, that sat on the god pillar in the temple. Touching that ring while lying? That wasn't just dishonor. That was blasphemy. Even Odin wouldn't bail you out. And he's the guy who traded an eye for wisdom. You glance down at the horn in your hand. It's empty now, the mead bitter on your tongue. Around you, the others laugh and plan raids, and talk about that one time Bjorn punched a bear. He didn't, but no one's correcting him. But the laughter is sharp-edged. The smiles are tests. You are Viking now, sworn by blood and drink and gaze. You are trusted, until you're not. And when that moment comes, it won't be loud, no warning, no second chance, just a knife maybe, or a long silence where once there was laughter. So maybe think twice before you ever betray a Viking. They never forget, and they certainly never forgive. The cold never really leaves your bones, does it? Even wrapped in thick wool and warmed by firelight, there's something in the Viking air that gets into you. Maybe it's the salt, maybe it's the fear, but either way it sharpens every instinct, especially the one that whispers, "Don't get caught shaming your name." You've learned by now, honor isn't just a fancy beard and a cool nickname. It's your currency, your insurance, your invisible shield. And it's fragile. Lose your sword? You can forge another. Lose your ship? You can build one better. But lose your honor? You might as well start digging your own burial mound. The Norse called it drengskapur, a concept that folds in bravery, truthfulness, fairness, loyalty. Basically, you're expected to be the kind of person who doesn't steal goats, lie to your friends, or skip town before a duel. And if you did any of those things, well, word travels fast in a world without TikTok. Much faster, somehow. Now imagine this. You're standing before your clan, the chieftain looming in his furs like a bear that learned how to speak. You're accused of betrayal. Maybe you lied about silver. Maybe you failed to show up during a raid. Maybe, God's forbid, you spoke sweet words to another man's wife. She did smile at you first, but let's not split hairs. Your knees don't shake yet, but your mouth's dry. Everyone's watching, no one's smiling. The hall is quieter than a grave, and you know exactly why. Because here's the thing, betrayal wasn't just personal, it was communal. When you failed someone in your clan, it wasn't just one person you let down. You tore a seam in the social fabric, and Vikings weren't known for mending things gently. There's a term you might hear whispered, nidingur. It's the worst thing someone can call you, not coward, not fool, but nidingur, an oathbreaker, a man without honor. There's no coming back from that. You can fight a rival. You can even kill a kinsman in a duel and still have some shred of reputation. But betray your oath? You're lower than livestock. Some accounts mention that being labeled a nidingur stripped you of legal protection. Yes, legal. As in, anyone can kill you now and no one will be punished. Think of it as Viking cancel culture, but with more axes and fewer apologies. And remember, this wasn't a society that forgave easily. It wasn't all longships and feasts and yelling "Skoll" into the wind. These were people who believed your worth followed you into the afterlife. Die with a shameful reputation, and you might not get to feast in Valhalla. Instead, you get the cold, damp nothing of Helheim. No songs, no drinking horns, just eternity with your regrets. Historians still argue whether this belief in posthumous reputation was literal or just powerful metaphor. Either way, it worked. People cared. A lot. Some might even kill themselves rather than live with shame. That's how deep honor ran. Now let's pivot just a little to something stranger. There's a fringe theory, passed around like a drunken skald's tale, that some warriors mark themselves with runes to burn honor into their flesh. Not tattoos exactly, more like scarring rites or symbolic wounds. One odd record mentions a warrior who carved a rune of loyalty onto his chest with a fishhook. Gross? Yes, but effective, especially if your enemies can literally see you value your oaths more than your skin. And yes, that guy did get betrayed eventually. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Back to you. You're still standing in the hall, but now the chieftain's hand is twitching near his belt. Maybe toward the axe. Maybe toward the pouch of tokens that decide your fate. You're tempted to speak, to defend yourself, but you know too well, words are slippery, especially in a crowd that respects action over argument. So what do? You tell the truth. Loudly, bravely, maybe even foolishly. You swear by Odin's one eye that you meant no harm, that your heart is clean. You drop to your knees, not in submission, but in raw desperation, and you hope, really hope, someone in that room still believes in mercy. Because if not, there's always the bog. They're very convenient for making people disappear. You might wonder why betrayal was such a lightning rod. After all, weren't Vikings raiders? Thieves? Pirates even? Yes and no. Sure, they looted monasteries and burned towns, but internally, their world ran on precision loyalty, like a machine made of flesh and shield wood. The outside world got chaos. Inside the clan, order. Predictable, brutal order. Even war bands followed this code. Shield brothers weren't just allies, they were extensions of yourself. That's why betrayal felt like self-mutilation, like slicing off your own sword hand. So you see, the price of honor wasn't just steep, it was inescapable. And the next time you raise a horn of mead in a flickering longhouse, surrounded by warriors whose laughs sound just a bit too sharp, remember, they'll toast with you today, but they'll gut you tomorrow, if your word ever breaks. You wake before dawn, as always. Not because the rooster crows, roosters don't last long in a Viking camp, but because habit is louder than sleep. You roll out from your wool blanket, bones stiff from the damp earth, and breathe the cold in through your teeth. The air smells of smoke, seaweed, and tension. There's a raid planned. You shoulder your gear and step outside, boots crunching frost. Around you, others stir. Grizzled men with braided beards, young warriors still trying to grow theirs, a few women just as bloodbound and twice as patient. Everyone moving in rhythm, oiled like a war machine. And at the center of it all stands the chieftain. He doesn't shout, doesn't wave arms, he just looks. One glance from him carries weight, a command, a question, a warning. See, when you're part of a Viking warband, the chieftain isn't just your boss, he's your center of gravity. He decides who gets what share of the loot, who gets the best bunk, who leads the charge, and who watches the horses. And the one thing he never tolerates? Disloyalty. Oh, he'll forgive a late return or a bad joke. But if he catches you lying, skimming treasure, whispering to a rival clan, that's not a mistake. That's treason with a lowercase axe. You once saw what happened to a man who thought the chieftain's daughter wouldn't notice him snooping near the family longship. The man vanished. Not in a dramatic way. No screaming, no public execution. Just gone. His boots were found 2 days later, filled with fish guts and placed neatly outside the mead hall. Message received. Historians still debate whether Viking leadership was truly centralized or more like tribal democracy. The truth is, it depended. Some chieftains were barely more than respected elders. Others were kings in all but name, ruling through strength, fear, and careful generosity. Your chieftain? He's one of the latter. He has a wolf pelt, a voice like cracked ice, and a memory sharper than his sword. Every favor granted is remembered. Every offense is logged somewhere behind those cold blue eyes. And while he might laugh during a feast, he never really laughs. So you stay in line. Everyone does. Because there's a saying around here. The chieftain's eye sees deeper than the fjord. And you're not eager to test that theory. Still, humans are humans. Ambition doesn't wait politely for permission. And sometimes, someone tries to outsmart the chieftain. Take the case of Olaf Twice Sworn. You remember him well. He was charming, funny, had a way with horses, and a grin that could sell fish to a fisherman. He swore loyalty to your chieftain, took oaths under the mead horn, and kissed the god ring like he meant it. Then he disappeared for 3 days, came back with strange silver and even stranger excuses. Said he'd been lost in a storm, said the coins were from a foreign merchant, but the smell of sea salt and sandalwood on him, that screamed Frankish traitor, not Norse misadventure. The chieftain said nothing at first, just nodded, asked a few too casual questions, let Olaf believe he was in the clear, and then one morning, Olaf woke up on a ship he didn't board, tied, gagged, and sailing straight into the icy mouth of exile. Exile, by the way, wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was a slow death with extra steps. You lose your protection, you lose your name. You even lose the right to be buried in clan soil. You're a ghost with skin. And just like that, Olaf was gone. his memory preserved only in a new joke told around the fire. What's got two thumbs and no honor? Not Olaf, not anymore. Now, for a quirky twist. Some sources mention that a few chieftains kept rune bones for judgment, bits of carved antler or ivory inscribed with sacred symbols. Not magic, exactly, more like spiritual dice. If someone was accused of betrayal, the bones might be thrown. The reading, interpreted by the chieftain or a seeress, could mean mercy or doom. Historians still argue whether these readings were taken seriously or simply used to justify decisions already made. Either way, you've seen one tossed before. They bounce once, spin, land with a soft thunk that somehow feels like thunder. This morning you catch the chieftain watching you a bit longer than usual. Just a glance, barely a flicker, but enough to freeze your stomach. Have you done anything wrong? Number probably not. You shared your loot, paid your tithe, didn't flirt with anyone you weren't supposed to. Still, that glance lingers in your mind like smoke. You remind yourself, this is the cost of being Viking. Power doesn't protect, it observes. And the more loyal you seem, the more sharply you'll be judged if you ever step off the path. Because the chieftain's eye never blinks, and it never forgets. You grip your shield tighter than usual today, not because of the weather, it's brisk but manageable, not because of the enemy. You've fought worse, and honestly they rarely put up much of a challenge. No, it's because of who's standing beside you. To your left, Ivar, your childhood friend. To your right, Bjarka, a barrel of a man with the personal hygiene of a goat and the loyalty of one too, unpredictable at best. You've fought beside both, you've laughed with both. But now, only one of them still feels like a brother, the other one feels off. It's the shield wall. That's what's making your palms sweat, not fear of battle, fear of betrayal in battle. See, the shield wall isn't just a tactic, it's a covenant. You're only as safe as the man beside you is loyal. If he flinches, exposes your side, or, Odin forbid, runs, you die. Instantly. Messily. Probably impaled by some underfed Saxon with a rusty pitchfork. And worse, you die dishonored. Vikings didn't build fortresses. They built men into living barriers. Shoulder to shoulder, shield to shield, like a scale of dragonhide across the battlefield. It worked beautifully, so long as everyone held their place. That trust was sacred, unspoken, absolute. Break it? You're not just a coward, you're a traitor. There's an old story of a man named Frodi. Mid-battle, he slipped, stumbled, and dropped his shield. It was a mistake, not betrayal. But the line broke. A dozen warriors died. Frodi lived, only to be exiled with his lips sewn shut. Historians still argue whether that actually happened, or if it's a cautionary tale wrapped in horror. Either way, you never forget it. Now Bjarka shifts. Just a little. A twitch. A glance behind. Is he afraid? Is he planning something? You grit your teeth. If he turns, you'll have to strike him before the enemy does. That's the law of the wall. The funny thing? No one talks about it. No one says, hey, don't betray us mid-battle, okay? It's assumed. Like breathing. Like not marrying your cousin twice. Once is already pushing it. And sure, Viking laws varied across regions, but there's a universal truth here. Betrayal in combat is worse than defeat. Lose a battle, and you can recover. Lose trust in your shieldmate, and you've already lost the next war. You adjust your grip, shift your stance. The line begins to move. The charge is slow at first, like thunder gathering in boots. You march forward, shields raised, spears poised, and you can feel the weight of everyone around you. The way your shield overlaps the next. The way your shoulder presses into Ivar's. The way Bjarka's breath whistles too fast, too loud. And then, clash. Swords scrape, wood splinters, a horn bellows. You're suddenly in it, throat deep in chaos. And all you can rely on is muscle memory and the man beside you. So when Bjark shifts again, you growl. Not in warning, in promise. If he runs, you'll cut him down before the enemy gets the chance. You won't hesitate. Because in the Viking world, betrayal doesn't always come in grand political gestures. Sometimes it's just someone dropping their guard, leaving your flank open and surviving while you bleed out in the mud. And yet, there's beauty here too. The shield wall isn't just brutal, it's elegant. A kind of trust ballet if you squint hard enough. Feet move in sync, shields shift like tides. A well-trained line can push through cavalry, hold against archers, crush bones without ever breaking formation. It's a physical poem of loyalty, and it's earned. Back in camp, you remember how rookies were tested, not with words, but drills, hours of wall practice, left shoulder lock, right spear thrust, shuffle forward, hold the line, again, and again, and again, until their arms shook and their legs gave out. And even then, they weren't trusted until they'd proven themselves in real battle. Some warriors trained for years before being allowed a spot in the front line. Others never earned it at all. You once heard about a village that carved the names of shield brothers into the side of their longship, only after they survived their first raid together. Quirky? Sure, but effective. There's something binding about seeing your name beside another's, etched in salt-worn oak. So now in the middle of this mess, you fight. You don't think. You react. Every block, every stab, every inch gained is powered not by rage or glory, but by faith in the people beside you. Because without that, you might as well walk into battle naked. Eventually, the enemy breaks, runs, the line holds. You pant, aching, bruised, but whole. Bjarka is still there. So is Ivar. You don't speak, just exchange a glance. No betrayal today, but that doesn't mean tomorrow's safe, because the shield wall remembers, and so do you. The feast after battle is always a strange thing. You sit in a long hall with smoke curling toward the rafters, meat sizzling over open flame, and the sound of drunk warriors laughing like children who've just discovered fire. Everyone's still stained from combat, grime under the nails, dried blood in the hair, but it's like none of it happened. Now, it's all toasts and stories and exaggerated gestures about how someone totally split a man in two with one swing. He didn't. But who's going to argue? You chew slowly. It's good meat. Maybe goat. Maybe boar. You stopped asking after that one time it turned out to be seagull. There's warmth in your belly, but something colder settling behind your ribs. Greed is in the room. You can smell it. See, the loot was divided earlier today. It's always a careful ritual. Equal shares for those who fought, bigger ones for those who bled, and a little extra for the chieftain, of course. But the way Hrolf accepted his portion, too quiet, too quick, like a man hiding something shiny in his coat. You don't say anything. Yet. But you notice. Because in Viking culture, treasure wasn't just treasure. It was trust materialized. Every coin, every jewel, every silver bracelet was a physical manifestation of loyalty. You shared it, or you spoiled everything. There's even a term for hoarding unfairly, loot slinking. It's not heroic, it's not clever, it's cowardice. And if you're caught doing it, you're seen as someone who believes personal gain matters more than collective survival. And in a culture where collective survival means living through the winter, that's basically murder in slow motion. The Norse had specific customs for how loot was split. In some regions, the chieftain would cast lots or call on a thing, a council, to arbitrate disputes. In others, it was all up to the leader's discretion. But either way, fairness mattered. Historians still argue whether the loot system was truly equitable or just a way to keep lower-ranking warriors complacent. But you know this much. If someone's sneaking extra gold into their furs, they're not just greedy, they're dangerous. Let's take a brief detour, a little quirky tale from the archives. There's this old story about a warrior named Kettle who looted a golden cross from a church but hid it from his crew. He claimed it was cursed, said he was keeping it buried for their safety. They let it go. For a while. But eventually, they noticed his cloak looked newer. his boots, better. One night, his entire tent vanished. Gone. No blood, no sign of struggle. Just a smudge of ash and a single gold coin on the grass. Spooky, right? Well, the point stuck. Back in the hall, Hrolf is laughing too hard now. Not at something funny, at something safe. Too safe. That's when your suspicion sharpens. You lean back and scan the others. Who's watching him? Who else saw what you did? And then you meet eyes with Estrid. Estrid doesn't smile much. She sharpens spears, not jokes. But tonight she's grinning slightly, and it's not kind. That grin says, yes, I saw it too, and I'm just waiting for the right moment. You nod. Slightly. That's all it takes. Tomorrow someone will accidentally drop a question about fairness during sparring. Someone else might mention that gold bracelet Hrolf supposedly gave to the gods, only it looks suspiciously like it's now on his brother's wrist. No one accuses yet. But the seeds are planted. Because betrayal isn't always a sword in the back. Sometimes it's a pouch too heavy, a smile too smug, a fire burned too long for someone who swears they only took their share. And here's the thing. Greed spreads. Once one man cheats, others start wondering why they shouldn't. Why should I risk my life if he's reaping more? Why should I stay loyal if the system's already bent? That's how clans fall apart. That's how brothers become rivals, and war bands become enemies. You've seen it before. A once mighty group splinters because someone couldn't stop pocketing silver cups. The worst part? Sometimes the betrayal doesn't get noticed until it's too late, until the longhouse burns down and everyone's pointing fingers through the smoke. That's why tonight you eat in silence, not because you're afraid, but because you're watching and planning. Vikings lived loud, but they listened quietly. And those who listened best, they survived longest. So next time someone asks you, why would anyone betray a Viking? You'll know the answer isn't always fear. Sometimes it's greed, that glittering, whispering itch for more than your share. And if you give in to it, the mead might taste sweet. But the end? It'll come fast, and silent, and cold. The hall is quiet the next morning, eerily so. Usually, after a feast, there's the groaning symphony of hangovers, the clatter of empty mugs, the thump of someone vomiting behind the woodpile. Today? Silence. Heavy and expectant, like a storm crouching just above the treetops. You rise before the others, boots crunching on the frost-crusted floor as you step outside. The sun hasn't fully broken over the hills, and the mist curls around the thatched roofs like it's listening in. You're not surprised when you spot Estrid already up, sharpening her axe, eyes fixed on the horizon as though daring it to blink first. She doesn't speak. Neither do you. But you both know it's coming. Betrayal, when it comes from inside the kin group, is colder than a Saxon winter. Because the thing about Vikings is that they took kin seriously. Not just family by blood, but chosen kin. Those you fought beside, feasted with, swore oaths to under burning skies. Once you were bonded, you were closer than bone. But that closeness, it cuts both ways. Because a cousin can get closer with a knife than any enemy could from across a battlefield. The sagas are riddled with betrayal by kin. You remember the tale of Sigurd and Gunnar, don't you? Blood brothers, battle-bound, and yet, through a mess of marriage alliances and poisoned politics, one ends up killing the other. Not for glory, not even for gold, but for power. Historians still argue whether these sagas reflect real cultural values or dramatized warnings, but they existed for a reason. People knew the enemy isn't always outside the door. Sometimes he's sharing your campfire. You've seen it yourself. That time in Hedeby, when a warrior named Torsten accused his cousin of hiding spoils. There was no trial, no duel. Just a quiet disappearance, and a cloak hanging from a tree branch, stabbed through the center, nailed like a warning sign. And what did the clan do? Nothing. Because it wasn't about justice. It was about balance. See, Viking justice was rarely legal in the way we think of it. It was about preserving the equilibrium of honor and power. A betrayal had to be answered, not necessarily publicly, but definitively. That's why, this morning, no one is asking about Hrolf. Even though his bed is empty, even though there's a fresh set of muddy footprints leading down toward the river, even though you can smell blood somewhere in the reeds, Estrid gives you a look, not guilt, not triumph, just acknowledgement. And you nod, because Hrolf made his choice the moment he thought silver mattered more than loyalty. Still, that doesn't mean you feel clean. Justice in this world rarely does. Let's talk about the way betrayal within kin fractures more than trust. It ripples. One betrayal leads to suspicion, suspicion to paranoia, paranoia to fractured clans, and then feuds. Oh yes, Vikings were famous for them. There's an old fringe account of a family in western Norway who feuded for 4 generations because someone insulted someone else's sheep. Yes, sheep. It escalated so far that by the 3rd generation, children were trained not just in weapons, but in grudge holding. One uncle even changed his name just to dodge responsibility. Didn't work. They found him. The sheep never forgave him. But in all seriousness, feuds weren't funny. They were bloody, exhausting, and devastating. Betrayal inside kin lit those fires, and in some rare, horrible cases, betrayal came wrapped in hospitality. You've heard the whispers about guest rights, haven't you? Vikings weren't savages. They had rules. You invite someone into your home, you feed them, give them shelter. You don't harm them, and they don't harm you. Unless, of course, they do. There's the famous story of a guest who poisoned an entire family's stew pot because he wanted their farm. Stayed the night, smiled at the table, then fed them death with honey-glazed turnips. The revenge? Let's just say it involved wolves, and we'll leave it at that. Today, guest right betrayals are the kind you never forget. They're etched into the oral sagas like curses. And if you break that kind of trust, no god, neither Odin nor Freyr, will stand by you. Even Loki might wince a little. You glance around camp as more people begin to stir. They move carefully. No laughter. No idle chatter. There's an awareness now, a quiet recalibration of the social web. Everyone just became a little more careful. Everyone remembers that kin doesn't mean safe. Still, life moves on. It has to. There's wood to chop, ships to check, gear to mend. You busy yourself with these tasks, but your eyes flick constantly to others' hands. What are they hiding? What are they gripping too tightly? Because once the seed of betrayal is planted, it doesn't stop growing. You just hope you're not the next tree it wraps its roots around. You've always loved runestones. Not just the towering, ornately carved ones left in honor of dead kings or legendary raids, but the little ones too. The pocket-sized tokens, the weather-worn markers half buried near crossroads or riverbanks. They whisper even when you don't want them to. They remember what people want to forget. That's the thing about betrayal in the Viking world. It doesn't go away. It gets carved, etched, sung, sometimes even buried on purpose, like a shameful secret hidden beneath sacred earth. But buried doesn't mean gone. In the North, memory is stubborn. And stone never forgets. Today, you find yourself near one such stone. You didn't mean to. You were just following the stream, maybe trying to get some space after the Hrolf incident. Maybe trying to convince yourself that your conscience isn't actually muttering under its breath. But there it is, half lodged in moss, not tall, just a foot or two high. But the carving is unmistakable, a serpent knot, a broken sword, and the rune for needer, a betrayal marker. This wasn't made in honor, it was made in warning. Historians still argue whether betrayal stones were common or rare. Most don't survive. The big ones, yes, they're preserved in museums and books. But these quiet little ones, not so much. They exist on the fringe of scholarly debate. Half archaeology, half ghost story. But you know better. You've seen too many to believe they're fiction. There's a tale that if you speak aloud near one, the name of the betrayer will echo back at you, whispered through pine needles. You try it now, just to test. You say nothing specific, just a hum of curiosity. The wind stirs. A raven caws. Coincidence? Of course. Probably. Still, you step away quickly. The Vikings believed in marking everything: victory, death, love, oaths. And betrayal? That got its own language. Sometimes literal, sometimes symbolic. You recall the legend of a woman who embroidered a tapestry of her husband's betrayal using red-dyed threads from his own blood-stained cloak, wove it for 7 years, displayed it in her hall. Imagine walking into a room and seeing your worst moment captured in fine linen. You think about Hrolf again. What will his marker be? A song, a whispered tale, or nothing at all? Perhaps betrayal doesn't need monuments if the silence is loud enough. Let's get stranger. In some fringe accounts, certain Viking clans supposedly buried objects to mark betrayal: daggers wrapped in fox fur, horse skulls cracked deliberately, rune-inscribed pebbles placed beneath floorboards. The idea was that the earth would hold the memory until justice was complete. You once slept in a longhouse rumored to be built atop one of those burial sites. Every night the fire flickered wrong. Every morning your dreams tasted like salt and shame. Superstition? Sure. But tell that to the man who burned his own hut down because he found a runed stone beneath his bedpost with the word longhouse, lawless. The Viking world wasn't about forgetting. It was about anchoring memory. If someone betrayed the clan, the crime was made eternal, not just for punishment, but as a lesson. Children would touch the runestone and ask what the markings meant. They'd be told the story. Every time the same message: don't be like him. You sit now on a flat rock, watching the water pass. It doesn't pause, doesn't judge, just moves on. You wish humans could do the same. But that's not how things work here. Once accused, rightly or wrongly, a person's name can rot like fruit left too long in the sun. No one wants to stand near you. No one wants your help hauling nets. Even if your crime was imagined, your reputation isn't. A single accusation can ripple through a village for generations. That's why betrayal stones matter. They're anchors. Proof that something happened, even if the details are lost. Proof that loyalty failed. And maybe, just maybe, they're a reminder that every step you take here, every word you speak, is one more thread in someone else's tapestry. As you rise, brushing the moss from your palms, you make a silent promise. If someone ever carves your name into stone, it won't be for betrayal. It'll be for something better, something lasting, something true. Because you've seen what happens to the others. The ones whose stories are told in snarls and cold glances. The ones who live forever as a footnote on a cursed stone. And that's not the legacy you want carved in runes. You don't talk much about religion. Not because you don't believe. Everyone believes in something. But because belief in the Viking world isn't about pews and incense and men in robes. It's about who you'd die for, and more importantly, who you'd kill for. But lately, something's been shifting. You feel it like a splinter beneath your skin. The gods haven't changed, but the people whispering their names have. It started small. A cross here. A prayer muttered in Latin instead of Old Norse. Some trader from across the sea saying that Christ watches with kind eyes and turns cheeks instead of swinging axes. And you're not sure what to make of it. Because once, the only god who mattered was Odin, and he didn't care if you were good. He cared if you were worthy of death in battle, worthy of sacrifice, worthy of your word. But this new God, this Christ, he asks for something else entirely. Forgiveness, repentance, secret meetings in the woods where the cross is hidden beneath firs and old warriors squint nervously at wine cups. It's not just a new religion, it's a new loyalty, and that's dangerous. You remember the day you caught Arnie burying something behind the hall. At first, you thought it was silver, maybe stolen loot. But when you dug it up, heart pounding, you found not treasure, but a carved wooden cross, slender, plain, quietly defiant. You confronted him, of course. What else could you do? He swore it was just curiosity, a gift from a Frankish monk he'd met during a raid, said it meant nothing, swore on the blood of Thor himself. But the way he held it, software reverent, like a man cradling a secret too warm to let go. You said nothing then, but you never trusted him again. Historians still argue whether Viking conversions to Christianity were political moves or genuine shifts in faith. The truth? Probably both. Kings converted to gain favor with Christian kingdoms. Traders converted to gain access to new markets. And some warriors, especially the young, the uncertain, the tired, converted because forgiveness sounded better than judgment. But for you, and for most, it felt like a crack, because to follow the old gods was to accept the rules of loyalty and vengeance. To convert? That was to invite softness where edge was needed, to think maybe there's another way to live. You knew a man once, Ulf. Fierce in battle, slow to smile, good with a spear. One day, he returned from a raid on a monastery with more than just gold. He brought back a book. Not for burning, for reading. He couldn't read, of course, but he wanted to. Said the monks had stories that made him feel something. Said there was a peace in them, a future. He stopped drinking mead, stopped swearing oaths, started mumbling to himself at dawn, facing east. He lasted 2 months, disappeared one night after a hunting trip, never came back. His cloak was found, neatly folded, next to a blackened cross in the fire pit. You don't ask questions like who did it. You just understand that faith divided can become loyalty dissolved. And betrayal doesn't always wear a knife on its hip. Sometimes it wears a crucifix around its neck. Now you're seeing more signs. Quiet prayers before battle, not to Odin, but to Mary. A reluctance to join blood feasts. A hesitance at oaths sworn in mead hall smoke. It's not overt, not yet. But it's enough to unsettle the roots of tradition. Even the skalds, those wandering poets who once sang of Thor's hammer and Loki's tricks, are starting to weave softer stories, tales of forgiveness, of miracles, of quiet gods. The songs are still catchy, but the meaning? It's shifting under your feet. You find yourself wondering, is it betrayal to change, or is it betrayal to stay the same in a world that moves without asking? You don't have the answer. But tonight, when the fires burn low and the wind pushes against the walls, you sleep with your hand on your axe. Not because of raiders or bears, but because someone across the hall is praying silently in a language you don't understand. And for the first time in a long while, you're not sure they'd die for you, or that you'd die for them. You hear the song before you see the singer. It slips through the mead hall's wooden seams like smoke, curling around shoulders, wrapping behind ears. A low hum, stretched into rhyme, half spoken and half sung. You don't recognize the melody, but you know the tone. It's not just a song, it's a message. The skald has arrived. He sits near the hearth, eyes gleaming like wet stone, fingers idly drumming a rhythm on the rim of a goatskin drum. He's no warrior, not really. Thin arms, a limp from a childhood accident. But when he speaks, the entire hall leans closer. Because skalds don't just entertain, they remember. They are the keepers of glory, the sculptors of legacy. And if you ever think betrayal goes unnoticed, remember, a skald can immortalize you. In verse, in insult, in rhymes so catchy it'll outlive your grandchildren. Tonight's performance starts light. A tale of mistaken identity and a bear who became a chieftain's wife for 2 days. Laughter rolls through the hall. You smile too, until the skald's voice drops. He shifts. Now the tale darkens. A brother who took more than his share. A cousin who smiled too wide during a raid. A name that sounds suspiciously like Hrolf's, though never quite spoken. It doesn't need to be. Everyone knows who he means. This is how betrayals become saga. Historians agree the skalds wielded unusual power in Norse culture. More than entertainers, they were public opinion made flesh. A warrior might live and die with honor, but if a skald chose to paint him as a coward, that's the version that endured. And if the skald suggested betrayal, even if the evidence was thin, the stains stuck. You remember once hearing a skald describe a betrayal so subtly, so beautifully, that the accused man didn't even realize he was being condemned until a week later, when children started reciting the verse while playing with sticks. That man eventually left the village. People say he died in the snow. Others say he became a skald himself, rewriting his story in a far-off land. Either way, the first story is the one that stuck. Tonight, the skald finishes with a flourish, voice rising like wind off the fjord. He sings not of blood and steel, but of words that wound sharper than any sword. And when he stops, no one claps. Not because they're unimpressed, but because they understand. There's power in what's just been spoken, and warning. You look around. Everyone shifts a little in their seats. Some glance at each other. Others stare hard into their cups. A few laugh too loudly, trying to shake off the weight of what was just woven. But the story is already in motion. It will grow, be passed on, sung again, maybe tomorrow, maybe in another village, maybe with your name attached if you're not careful. And that's the fear that creeps under your skin tonight. Not that you'll be caught in a betrayal, but that someone will write it. Because when a skald puts your shame into verse, you can't just kill it. You can't fight it. It spreads. It lives. And long after you're dead, children with half your name might still blush when they hear it. One oddity that few talk about. Skalds sometimes wore tokens to ward off vengeance. Small Thor's hammers. Teeth carved with the rune of silence. Maybe superstition. Maybe precaution. After all, if you've just ruined a man's reputation in rhyme, it helps to have a little divine insurance. There's a saying, steel kills the body, the skald kills the future. You feel that tonight. You feel it deep. You glance over at the singer. He meets your eye, just briefly. There's no malice in him, only understanding. He doesn't hate the men he names. He just records. And in Viking society, that's more than enough to seal fate. So you remind yourself, it's not just the gods who are watching, not just the chieftain, or the clan, or the ghosts under the longhouse floor. It's the skald, listening, remembering, waiting. So if you ever do something unworthy, really unworthy, don't fear the axe, fear the song. The gods speak in silence. Or at least, that's what you tell yourself as you sit atop the cliff, the wind tugging at your cloak like an impatient child. Below, the sea crashes against jagged rock, a rhythm older than language. The sky is bruised with evening, and the ravens circle overhead, black specks against gray. This is where the old ones came to think, not to speak, not to shout, just to listen. And today, you're here for the same reason. Because lately, something's been stirring inside you. Doubt, maybe. Or a sense that the ground beneath your boots isn't as solid as it once felt. Not because of war or hunger or cold, but because of the gods. You see, the gods aren't distant in your world. They're immediate, intimate. Odin wanders the roads in disguise. Thor walks the storms. Loki might already be your drinking buddy, testing your temper just for sport. The gods don't ask for obedience. They demand participation. And betrayal. Oh, they see it. Sometimes they send it. There's a legend you half remember, passed around fire pits and carved into ale-stained memory. A warrior who betrayed his warband. Not for gold, not for power, but because a god told him to. He claimed Odin came to him in a dream, one eye blazing, whispering of fate and sacrifice. So he led his brothers into an ambush. They died. He lived. And when they dragged him before the chieftain, bleeding and wide-eyed, he only said, "It was the Allfather's will." No one really knew what to do with that. Some said he was mad, others said he was blessed, a few said he was both, which honestly sounds like most chosen men of the gods. In the end, they didn't kill him. They banished him, said if Odin truly favored him, he'd survive, maybe even thrive. He was never seen again, unless, of course, you count the whispers that he became a seer in the east, guiding kings from shadows. Historians still debate whether this story is myth, moral tale, or distorted record, but the idea sticks with you. Can betrayal be divine? And if so, is it still betrayal? You think of the signs, the raven that landed on your shield before last raid, the way your dreams have grown strange, twisting paths, unreadable symbols, the sound of waves crashing beneath a blood-red sky. You haven't told anyone, not even Estrid, because in this world, claiming the gods speak to you, that's not casual conversation. That's an invocation, a challenge, a reason for people to fear or to kill. Still, the thought haunts you. What if I'm meant to do something terrible but necessary? What if loyalty to fate is stronger than loyalty to men? One quirk of Norse spirituality is how it embraced fatalism, the idea that your path is already written. The Norns, the weavers of fate, spin your thread from the moment you're born. You can't change the ending, only the journey. That belief creates room for strange behavior. A man might betray his brothers if he believes it's his thread's natural bend, not out of malice, but out of duty. You remember when Bjarka, the burly oaf with too many opinions and not enough tact, muttered something about dreams guiding him to the west coast. He left midwinter, alone. Most thought he'd freeze by morning. 3 months later, he returned with news of a raid route no one knew existed. Rich lands, weak resistance. It made your village rich for a season. Some said the gods whispered to him. Others said it was dumb luck. He never explained. And now, you wonder. Because if the gods test you, not with battle, but with choice, are you still loyal if you refuse? Or is loyalty to man always meant to come second? Tonight, as the wind howls and the stars begin to blink into life above the fjord, you feel the weight of eyes on your back. Not human, not animal, something older. You don't turn. You just whisper, "If this is your will, show me." The wind shifts. You feel it in your bones. Not a voice, not a vision, just the certainty that if the gods want you to break an oath, they'll give you the chance. Soon. And when they do, you'll have to decide who you're loyal to, the men who bled beside you, or the gods who might have already written your betrayal into the stars. Chains rattle against your wrists, not heavy ones, but enough to keep your pride in check. Your feet are bare, cold on the packed earth, and the villagers form a loose half-circle around you. No one speaks. Not yet. This is not your trial. It's his. The man kneeling beside you, head bowed low, is pale. Pale in a way that no Viking should be. He hasn't been wounded. No blood loss, no gaping cuts. Just shame, carved deep into his skin like invisible runes. His name is Eric. You raided with him twice. Ate beside him more times than you can count. Once, you even shielded him from an arrow. And now, you're standing in the dust with him, watching the clan prepare for the hardest kind of judgment. What to do with a man who betrayed you out of fear. You see, Eric didn't sell you out to enemies. He didn't steal gold. He didn't sleep with anyone's wife. What he did? He talked. He got caught by Saxons during a river ambush, dragged into some muddy stone keep, and kept alive for weeks. He came back thin, quiet, eyes darting, claimed they tortured him, broke his fingers, pulled his beard out one strand at a time. But that wasn't what made people stare. It was what he didn't say. Because soon after, one of your outposts was raided. Exactly where you'd kept spare weapons. Exactly when the men were away. Almost like someone had told. And when the chieftain looked at Eric, he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Historians often note the Viking disdain for cowardice, but that's an oversimplification. It wasn't fear that disgusted them. It was failure to resist fear. A man could cry before battle, even shake. But betray the clan to save your own skin? That was unworthy. Worse, it was contagious. Because if Eric's slip is forgiven, what stops the next man from talking? Or the next? Suddenly, every sword is a maybe. Every mouth is a risk. So you're here, wrists bound, not as a prisoner, but as a witness. It's part of the ritual. Those closest to the accused must stand beside him, not to plead, not to protect, but to see, to remember. The chieftain steps forward now. His voice is calm but heavy. He doesn't yell, doesn't ask questions, just speaks facts. Eric swore the blood oath. Eric drank the mead. Eric called his shieldmates kin. And then Eric talked. You glance at him. He doesn't deny it. I didn't mean to, he whispers. I only told them where we camped that one night. I thought they wouldn't hurt me if I gave them that. And there it is. Not treachery. Not rebellion. Just a man bargaining with terror. But it doesn't matter. Because in Viking code, betrayal doesn't need malice. Only impact. The chieftain doesn't raise his axe. He doesn't need to. He declares Eirik Loglaus, without law, outlaw. It's the worst punishment, and in some ways, the most merciful. Eric won't be executed. He'll be exiled, which means anyone can kill him. No one can help him, and his name will never again be spoken in the mead hall. You watch as they cut his bonds, not to free him, but to let him walk into the world alone. You see the moment it breaks him. Not the exile, not the fear. It's the silence. No one curses him. No one spits. They just turn away. You do too. Because that's the rule. Even mercy here is ritualized, controlled, cold. And yet, as you walk back to camp, boots crunching through brittle grass, you feel that ache again. The one that asks, if I were in his place, would I have held out? You don't know. No one ever does, until they're there. In the dark, cold, alone, waiting for someone to decide if they're worth keeping. There's a fringe tale of a Viking prisoner who cut off his own tongue with a bone shard to avoid speaking under torture. He was later hailed as a hero and buried with honor. His name was etched into a stone near Jelling. You've seen it. Still, historians argue whether that story's true or just a lesson in extremity. Either way, it worked. The point wasn't whether the man lived. The point was that he refused to betray, even if it meant losing himself. Back at camp, no one talks about Eric. Not allowed. The fire burns, the meat roasts, the world continues. But a space lingers. An empty stool near the fire, a missing laugh. And you know, deep down, that betrayal doesn't always die when the man does. Sometimes it lingers, thin and sharp, like the edge of a knife you forgot was tucked beneath your belt. You can feel the heat of her gaze before you even see her. She stands near the edge of the training yard, her arms crossed, a single eyebrow arched like a challenge. Her hair is braided tight, her cloak pinned high. She looks like she just stepped out of a saga. And tonight, she is the saga, the Jarl's mistress. Her name is Signa. And if that name just sent a little spark through your spine, well, good. That means your instincts still work. Signa isn't just beautiful. She's strategic, sharp, the kind of woman who could slip a dagger into your ribs with one hand and pour you wine with the other. She doesn't flirt. She plays. And lately, she's been playing you. It started small. Shared glances at feasts, a laugh too long, a touch on your arm that lingered. Everyone noticed, of course. No one says anything directly. Because who would dare? She belongs to the Jarl, a man carved from stone and fury, with hands like hammers and a temper like a wolf with a thorn in its paw. He commands men and raids like you command your feet to move. He is not someone you accidentally offend, which is exactly why Signa's interest is so dangerous. It's not affection, it's a test. And you're failing. Historians often reduce Viking women to stereotypes, shield maidens or housewives, but the truth was far more complicated. Women like Sina held real power, even if it wasn't always on paper. They managed households, negotiated land deals, and in some cases, determined who lived long enough to eat breakfast. And when they betrayed, it wasn't with swords. It was with whispers, a glance, a letter, a secret passed between hands in the dark. Sina moves toward you now, slow and deliberate, like a ship sliding into harbor. You keep your hands at your sides, though every bone screams to run or reach or respond. She stops just close enough to share breath. "You missed training," she says. "I was at the river," you reply. "Next time, ask me first." It's not a flirtation. It's a warning. Because this tension between desire and destruction, is the most delicate kind of betrayal. The kind that doesn't look like war until the bodies hit the ground. You've heard stories of entire clans undone because one woman's secret love became public. Or because a jealous mistress let slip a secret to the wrong scald. Or because a man believed a smile meant sanctuary when it really meant trap. Take the tale of Leif the Red-Handed, handsome, confident, and just foolish enough to fall in love with his Jarl's daughter. They were discreet at first, then bold, then reckless. One morning, his body was found on the beach, throat torn open, heart missing. No one ever found the girl, but someone did find a necklace with her family's crest in the tide weeks later. Was it a warning? A confession? Historians still argue. Some say she loved him and tried to run. Others say she handed him over for daring to believe they were equals. Either way, he died. You don't want to be a Leif. So tonight you do nothing. You bow your head, say nothing. Let Sina's words hang in the air like a dagger suspended by a single thread. She watches you, waiting, judging. Then, just like that, she's gone. And the weight of her absence is heavier than her presence. You know the danger hasn't passed. It's just shifted, delayed. Because if the Jarl hears even a whisper, if someone sees a look or misreads a gesture, you won't get a duel. You won't even get a trial. You'll get a knife in the back on the way to breakfast. Still, something in you aches. Not from longing, but from the madness of it all. How easy betrayal can bloom when hearts thud too loud in the wrong rooms. You think of that quiet corner behind the granary, the time she brushed your hand, the promise she never voiced but made all the same. And you wonder, what if she's not testing you? What if she's trying to escape? What if she's just as trapped in her own web as you are in yours? You won't find out. Not now. Maybe not ever. Because the first rule of Viking survival is this: don't bleed where the wolves can smell it. So you turn away. You go back to the barracks. You drink your mead. You pretend you never noticed the Jarl's mistress watching you like a man already on fire. But in the dark, long after the torches burn out, you hear her voice in your head. And you know, some betrayals don't come with battle cries. Some come with a whisper and a smile. The thing about exile is that it always starts with silence. Not with shouting. Not with fire. Just absence. One morning, you wake up and someone's not there. No packed bags, no farewell. Just a space where a voice used to be. Maybe a cloak left behind, maybe a footprint in the ash, but no explanation. And when you ask, everyone shrugs. That's how you know someone betrayed the clan, and lived. Tonight, it's Hakan, gone without a word. No body, no blood, but his spear is missing. So is his pack. And the look on the chieftain's face, that says enough. Hakan betrayed you, and now he's chosen exile. It's easy to think of betrayal as sudden, sharp, dramatic, final, but exile introduces a different kind. A betrayal not with knives or lies, but with distance, with absence. And what's worse, sometimes they come back. You've seen it before. A warrior named Yrsa left your village during a hard winter, said nothing, took a mule and a full sack of dried meat. left her blood-bonded shield maidens behind. She was assumed dead. 2 years later, she returned, with foreign coin, a new accent, and enough confidence to challenge the chieftain's cousin for land rights. She won, and the clan accepted her, not out of love, out of fear. Because here's the hard truth. When a traitor returns stronger, everything gets complicated. Viking society valued honor, yes, but it also valued power. And if someone walked into camp with wealth, alliances, maybe even their own war band, suddenly, their betrayal isn't the story. Their comeback is. Historians still argue over whether returning exiles were genuinely forgiven or simply tolerated until they could be dealt with quietly. There's evidence of both. Some were welcomed, others were stabbed in their sleep within a week. Back to Håkon. He wasn't remarkable, good in a fight, lousy at jokes, but lately he'd been asking questions about foreign trade, about lands to the east, about whether a man could start over somewhere else and not owe anyone anything. Now he's gone, and everyone's pretending that doesn't bother them. But it does. Because if Håkon can walk away, so can others. It plants a seed, an idea that there's life beyond loyalty. That betrayal, if done quietly, might not mean death, might even mean freedom. That's dangerous. Because exile used to be the punishment, the worst thing, a slow-motion execution. But now you're not so sure. Now you wonder if it's a kind of liberation. You find yourself walking to the village edge after dusk, watching the tree line, wondering if Håkon is out there, building a hall of his own, laughing over foreign wine. And if he is, will he ever come back? Will he bring warriors? Will he bring revenge? Vikings didn't write down many laws, but they lived by codes. And one of the more unspoken ones? The exiled man returns with a reason, and it's rarely a good one. Still, not all comebacks are acts of vengeance. You remember a tale, half fact, half firelight fantasy, of a man who betrayed his clan by marrying into a rival tribe. He left quietly, lived well, and when his former clan was struck by famine, he sent them food. At first, they refused it. Then winter deepened. Eventually, they accepted. And when spring came, he returned, not as a supplicant, but as family. Some say he was welcomed, others say he was poisoned. You've never been sure which version is true, maybe both. The truth is, betrayal followed by strength unnerves people more than betrayal followed by death, because a dead traitor is a lesson. But a thriving one? That's a threat. Tonight, as the fire crackles and the wind carries strange sounds from the forest, you wonder what kind of return Håkon might plan, if any. And deeper still, a question curls beneath your ribs. If you left, would they miss you? Would they let you come back? Or worse, would they welcome you too easily? Because sometimes the worst betrayal isn't leaving. It's realizing you were never truly needed. You smell smoke before you see the fire, not the rich, comforting scent of hearth embers or roasted meat. This is different, sharper, cleaner, like pine tar and cold iron, like plans unraveling. You break into a run. Across the ridge, flames leap like mad things, licking the edge of the trees but not quite spreading, controlled, too controlled. It's not a wildfire, it's a message. When you reach the edge of the trees, your heart pounding, you see the truth. No buildings are burning, no warriors lie bleeding, just one of your old raid markers, a pile of stones shaped like a crescent, set ablaze. Someone set fire to the past, and in the Viking world, that's not vandalism, it's a signal. You remember that crescent well. You helped build it 3 years ago, in the highlands beyond Lindisfarne. It marked a secret supply path used during raids. Only your band knew it existed, which means someone from your band just broadcasted that knowledge to the world. It's a betrayal without blades, and somehow it hurts more. Betrayal in battle is impulsive, personal, emotional. But this is calculated, and you know who's responsible. Because last moon, You caught Kolfinna, the scout with the soft steps and wandering eyes, drawing something in the dirt near the fire. You glanced once, thought it was a map. She brushed it away quickly, laughed, said it was a memory. Now, you realize it was a route. The path that Marker guarded wasn't just about raiding. It was a legacy, a fallback, a promise. And now, it's exposed, probably sold, probably to someone with coin and vengeance. There's a saying among the elders, maps are lies we agree on, until someone tells the truth for silver. You stand there, wind clawing your face, wondering how she did it. Slipped away without notice. Maybe during that last skirmish, when she vanished for a half day to scout the ridge. You believed her. Everyone did. Now, you feel like a fool. Historians still debate how often Vikings betrayed each other for strategic gain. Some say clan loyalty trumped all. Others argue that as Norse influence expanded, politics crept in like rot, and betrayal became a tool. Quiet, surgical, effective. Tonight, you believe the latter, because this wasn't about hunger or fear. This was about ambition. Kolfinna didn't sell you out because she had to. She did it because she could. Because someone out there, maybe a rival clan, maybe a foreign lord, wanted what you had, and she had the map to give it to them. You pace along the fire's edge, mind racing. Do you track her? Do you wait? Do you tell the chieftain? Every choice feels wrong. Every breath tastes like ash. But you know this. The others need to be warned. Because when a Viking turns their back on a raid plan, it doesn't just affect warriors, it affects generations. Some families relied on that path for seasonal trade. Others buried things nearby, sacred things. The land itself remembers the blood spilled along those routes. And now, that land has been offered up. You remember the tale of Joran the cartographer, a man whose mind was sharper than any sword. He mapped over a dozen raid routes, guarded them like treasure. Then one day, he defected to the Franks. They gave him a vineyard. He gave them an empire's worth of tactics. The Norse never got those routes back. Some say his name is still cursed in parts of Denmark. Others say he died choking on wine during a storm. Either way, his betrayal rewrote coastlines. Kolfinna's won't be that big, but it's enough. Because betrayal doesn't have to break the world. Sometimes it just has to tilt it, a degree, a hair. Just enough that, over time, everything veers off course. You leave the ridge slowly, the fire behind you hissing into night. As you walk, you find yourself muttering the old phrase under your breath. Paths remembered by too many feet become roads for enemies. You'll warn the chieftain, quietly, carefully, but you'll also do something else. You'll find the others who still believe in silence, who remember that a route isn't just a line on a map, it's trust, carved into terrain. And then, you'll draw new paths, and this time you'll make sure no one walks them who hasn't bled for them first. Silver sings when it falls into a man's hand. You hear it even now, faint, echoing, as if it's being poured somewhere far off, just out of reach. A cascade of coins, each one a betrayal, sealed and stamped by foreign kings. Because this isn't about love, or fear, or even revenge anymore. It's about coin, hard, cold, foreign silver, and it's louder than loyalty. You've seen it before, not just once, too many times. Vikings whose oaths fray the moment a pouch of glittering metal is dropped on the table. Some even call it the white worm, because once silver wraps around a man's heart, he starts to rot from the inside. Today, the worm is wriggling through your camp. It starts with whispers. It always does. That a foreign king is hiring warriors. That he doesn't care where they come from, as long as they swing their swords the right way. That he pays in silver so clean, it smells like rain. And that he's not just looking for soldiers. He's looking for maps, alliances, inside men. You watch as Torvi, the old sea wolf who once swore to die defending your coast, holds a strange coin up to the firelight. He rolls it across his knuckles like a game. Doesn't say where he got it. Doesn't have to. You know what it means. Historians have long noted how Norsemen became mercenaries across Europe, serving in the Byzantine Varangian Guard, raiding and trading across the continent, sometimes even protecting kings they once tried to kill. What they argue about is this: were these warriors betraying their roots, or simply surviving smarter? You lean toward the former, because what is loyalty if it can be bought? You remember a tale your father told, before his voice grew too hoarse with age. The story of Asbjorn the Gilded. He raided for years, built a name, carved fear into the coasts of Wessex. Then one day, he stopped, took a foreign lord's coin, started protecting the very villages he once looted, got rich, built a hall with servants and silk curtains and gilt in every timber. When he died, no one claimed his body. Even the gods turned their faces away. Some say he still haunts the shores, his soul too fat with silver to float. You shake off the story, because tonight, it's not about ghost tales. It's about real men. Men you once trusted, now glancing at ships from across the sea with something hungry in their eyes. Men who practice with foreign blades, who wear cloaks dyed in southern colors, who speak too quietly when traders come through. And worst of all, some of them look at you like you're the fool for still carrying loyalty like a shield. There's one more thing you know. Silver doesn't come without strings. That foreign king, he doesn't just want swords. He wants leverage. If you take his coin, you take his mark. You become a message to your own people. Your loyalty is weak. Your honor can be leased. And once you open that door, once the jingle of foreign silver outshouts the call of kin, you can't shut it again. Ever. That's why you refuse it. Even when a trader offers you a pouch, even when he says it could buy you 3 horses and a winter's worth of meat, even when he says, no one has to know. You push it back across the table, and you say, that's exactly why I won't take it. Because the moment no one knows, the moment no one sees, that's when betrayal truly begins. Not with blood, not with lies, but with silence, and a coin too clean to be honest. You walk out of that tent feeling both heavier and lighter, because you're still poor, still cold, still scraping meals from the edge of your sword. But you're clean, and you'll sleep without looking over your shoulder. Because when the silver starts singing, you want to be the one who doesn't hear it. You hear them long before you see them. Drums, not loud, not warlike, but slow, steady, like a heartbeat in a cave, like memory knocking on the walls of your skull, the kind of rhythm that makes you think of cold nights and old promises. You follow the sound. It leads you down to the shore, where the wind bites and the gulls scream overhead. But the beach is empty. No raiders, no traders, just the bones, old ones, laid out carefully in a half circle. Not buried, not burned, arranged. This is no accident. This is a calling. And suddenly you remember, there was a boy in your clan once, Skari, pale hair, quiet hands, always listening, never shouting. One day, he swore an oath, loud, proud, clumsy with emotion. I'll avenge my brother, he'd said, even if it takes my whole life. And then, he vanished. For years, nothing. And now this. The ghost feud. That's what the elders called it. When someone leaves not because they hate you, or fear you, or want power, but because they're chasing vengeance. A cold, ancestral flame that never quite dies. You've seen the signs before. A pile of fish left outside an empty longhouse. A rune scratched onto a door frame no one admits to carving. An offering to a god no one speaks aloud. That's what this is. Someone's been here. Someone who remembers something the rest of you tried to forget. You kneel by the bones. Human, yes, burned in parts. Maybe a warrior. Maybe just someone who got in the way. You don't recognize the skull, but the arrangement, half circle, facing the sea, tells you this isn't a burial. It's a warning, because the dead are being used now, their stories, their silence, their unfinished business, and whoever's behind it is betraying more than a person. They're betraying peace. Vikings were no strangers to revenge, but there were rules, cycles. A blood feud had a rhythm, 2 generations, maybe 3, then someone calls it even. A marriage is arranged, a goat is sacrificed. Everyone drinks too much and pretends it's done. But sometimes, someone says no. Someone says they never paid enough. They never suffered enough. And then, the feud wakes back up. Historians still argue over how many Viking feuds actually spanned generations. Some think the stories were exaggerated. Others believe the pain was real, kept alive not by fact, but by ritual. Because rituals matter. They carry betrayal like a torch. You've heard of curses spoken over grave mounds, of sons raised to hate names they'd never heard spoken aloud, of knives passed down like heirlooms, waiting to fulfill a grudge no one remembers the origin of. You look over the beach one more time. Nothing stirs, but you feel it, like a draft behind your ribs. This is a betrayal from the past, not to you, personally, but to the fragile trust your people have built over years of trying to stop killing each other. And the worst part? It's working. Already warriors in the camp are sharpening blades too often, asking old questions, stirring up names that should have stayed buried, because vengeance is catchy, like fire or plague. You walk back slowly, boots sinking into damp sand. The tide creeps closer, and in the hush between waves, you swear you hear whispering, not voices, bones. Bones don't speak, of course, but they remember. You reach the edge of the village and pause. Tomorrow you'll tell the chieftain. Maybe. Or maybe you won't. Maybe it's better to let old ghosts stay angry in the dark. But you know this much. Betrayal doesn't always wear a heartbeat. Sometimes it's the hand of the dead reaching forward, pulling at the living, asking them to finish what they never could. And that's a war no shield can block. Hunger doesn't knock. It creeps, seeps into your bones, coils in your belly and whispers things you swore you'd never consider. It's early winter now, the kind of cold that gnaws instead of bites. The stores are thinner than usual. The last hunt brought back half a deer and a lot of frostbite. And the fish, well, even the gods must be hungry because they've stopped sending them. The village is quieter these days, not solemn, not respectful, tense. People move slower. Eyes linger longer on others' packs, bowls, hands. Every clink of a spoon sounds suspicious. Every bite is counted. You've seen it before. You know what's coming. The kind of betrayal that no one wants to name. The kind that slips in when the world gets lean. Food theft. And it's worse than it sounds. Because stealing food in a Viking winter isn't just a petty crime. It's a death sentence for someone. Maybe not the thief, maybe the child who goes without, the elder who doesn't get enough, the warrior who fights weaker because his stew was just a little thinner. The act is small, the consequences are massive, and the anger? It's always personal. Last night, you saw Svala's eyes. She was watching the smokehouse, not like someone guarding it, but like someone calculating. She has 3 children. Her husband died on the last raid. She's not weak, she's not cruel, but she's hungry. And hungry people become desperate. There's an old tale, half warning, half prophecy, of a village that turned on itself one winter. People started locking their storerooms, then their doors, then their fists. Eventually, a man was found with a chicken bone still in his mouth, belonging to a hen that had gone missing a week before. They buried him in snow, standing up. Historians still debate whether that story is real or just a lesson against selfishness. Either way, it worked. Every child in your village knows it. And yet, here you are, watching your people edge closer to that same fate. You check your pack every morning. You count your shares. You pretend not to notice when Estrid eats slower than usual. like she's stretching her portion with patience alone. Because this kind of betrayal doesn't shout. It happens quietly. A finger dipped into a pot when no one's looking. A smoked trout tucked into a sleeve. A log removed from someone else's firewood stack. And each act chips away at the clan's trust. Because it's not just about the food. It's about the belief that someone values their survival more than yours. That's the true betrayal. One winter, years ago, you were on watch rotation when it happened. A child stole from the communal cache, half a loaf of bread, a wedge of dried goat. When caught, she didn't cry. She said, "It was for my brother." He was sick. Everyone forgave her. No one forgot. She was marked after that. Not punished, not outcast, but watched. Always watched. And eventually she left. Sometimes you wonder if she ever forgave the village for how it looked at her. Tonight, the fire burns lower than usual. Everyone's conserving wood. The stews are mostly water. You chew on something leathery and tasteless and try not to imagine it once had legs. Then you hear it. A sound outside. Quick. Software. You rise. Quiet as ice cracking. Outside, behind the storage hut, you see a figure. Small, bundled, moving fast, hands dipping into the sacks. You don't yell. You just step forward. It's Svala. She freezes. Doesn't beg. Doesn't explain. Just stands there with a small bag of dried berries in her fist. Her eyes shine with something beyond shame. It's fury. Fury that you caught her. And for a moment, you understand. You don't say anything. You reach out slowly, take the berries from her hand. You don't hit her. You don't raise an alarm. You just nod toward her tent. She walks away. And you? You don't know if you just preserved peace or enabled war. Because hunger twists people, turns neighbors into watchers, turns survival into betrayal. And you can't help but wonder, if the cold deepens, who will be next? Will it be a thief or a judge? Because in the Viking world, betrayal isn't always grand. Sometimes it's just a bite taken when no one's looking, and sometimes it's what happens after. The hearth crackles, the stew simmers, the hall smells like cedar smoke and quiet lies, and sitting across from you, nursing his ale like it owes him something, is your half-brother. You haven't seen him in 4 winters, not since your father died, and the land was divided like a butcher's table. You got the southern field, he got the northern pasture. Neither of you got what you truly wanted. Now here he is, smiling too wide, cloak too clean, boots too new. And the way everyone else is pretending not to look at him? That tells you everything you need to know. Family feuds aren't new. In Viking sagas, they're practically a genre. Brothers killing brothers, uncles plotting in corners, stepmothers whispering poison into ears. Some of the most famous betrayals weren't from enemies or foreigners. They were from within. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. In fact, sometimes it guarantees the opposite. Because kinship carries expectation. And expectation unmet turns to bitterness faster than milk left in the sun. You sip your drink. You watch him. You wait. And sure enough, he leans in. "I heard the chieftain's thinking of stepping down," he says, like he's asking about the weather. You say nothing. He grins. "If he does, you should speak for leadership, with my support, of course. We'd make a good team." There it is, the offer. Not direct betrayal, yet, but the first tug at the thread. Because everyone knows the chieftain isn't stepping down, not unless something makes him. And this is how it starts. You've seen it before. A cousin and a second cousin form a pact, a quiet one. Then someone falls off a cliff. Someone else disappears in the woods. And suddenly, there's a vote. And someone with a weaker claim stands in front of the clan, calling himself Jarl. Historians still debate how formal Viking leadership transitions were. Some were elected at a thing, others inherited, others taken by force. The truth? It was always a little of each. Power was a soup, part blood, part steel, part manipulation. And now your half-brother is ladling it into your bowl. You ask him why he really came. He shrugs. Heard you might need help. You look at his hands. Software, no scars, no new calluses. He hasn't held a sword in months. He hasn't come to help. He's come to position. And suddenly, you remember a fringe tale from your youth. 2 half-brothers, both favored by their dying father. One poisoned the other's mead, but the mead was switched by mistake, and both drank. They died before the will was read. The skalds love that one, especially the twist. You lean back. You tell your half-brother, I don't need help. He smiles again. This one's sharper. Not yet, he says, but you will. Later that night, you hear movement outside your tent. Just a snap of a twig. Could be a fox, could be a rival, could be him. You rise, quietly draw your knife. You don't attack, you just listen, nothing. But something has shifted, not just between you two, but in the village itself. Because when kin feud, the lines blur. Who's loyal to him? Who owes him a favor? Who remembers that time you insulted his mother at the spring festival? Divided bloodlines are dangerous not just because they splinter, but because they confuse. The village becomes a chessboard, and every move risks revealing your strategy. You think about telling the chieftain, but what would you say? My brother smiled wrong. Number. This kind of betrayal isn't caught with evidence. It's caught with instinct, and yours is screaming. So you sleep with a blade now, and you start watching who shares ale with whom. You listen for laughter that stops too quickly, for greetings that come half a beat too late. Because betrayal doesn't always arrive with an axe. Sometimes it comes wearing your father's nose. They hang him at dawn, not for theft, not for cowardice, not for murder, for betrayal. The wind is sharp on your cheeks as you stand in the circle of villagers, the gallows creaking gently overhead. Everyone's watching, no one speaking. Even the birds seem to hold their breath. His name was Knut. A boy, really, barely grown, eager, clumsy, always too quick to speak. He wanted to prove himself, wanted to belong, so badly that he made a deal. The details are whispered, but the outline is clear. He'd been trading messages. With who? No one says it aloud. Maybe a rival clan, maybe a jealous outcast, maybe something worse, someone foreign. Whatever the truth, it doesn't matter now. What matters is that he told someone something he shouldn't. A supply route, a name, a plan. And 2 days later, that information got people killed. So here you are, watching his feet dangle just above the frost-hardened dirt. Because in the Viking world, some betrayals can't be exiled, can't be forgiven. They must be ended, and publicly. Not because it fixes anything, but because it warns everyone else. You glance at the chieftain. His face is still, impassive. A man who's seen this before. A man who might one day order it done to you, if your words ever turn traitorous. The skald is here too, standing off to the side, not singing this time, just watching, lips tight. Because even silence becomes a verse when it's held long enough. You remember the night before, Knut's last night. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He said, I just wanted to matter. And that's what strikes you now. Not the betrayal, not the punishment, but the reason. Because sometimes betrayal isn't about greed or fear or vengeance. Sometimes it's just a soul starved for recognition. A boy who didn't feel seen, who thought if he helped someone powerful, even someone dangerous, he'd finally be important. And in a twisted way, he was right. He matters now. He's the lesson. Historians write a lot about justice in Viking society, how it was swift, brutal, often local. They debate whether executions like this were fair or politically motivated. But you're not thinking about fairness today. You're thinking about the finality. There's no redemption now, no second chance, no saga that ends in glory, only a rope, and a name that no one will speak again unless it's in warning. A boy who became a ghost in front of everyone, and still, you can't look away. Because this is how betrayal ends when it fails. Not in triumph, not in exile, but in spectacle. And the message it sends, clearer than any sword. Loyalty is not just expected, it is enforced. And if you ever forget that, if you ever feel invisible, overlooked, undervalued, you must remember, the moment you trade trust for attention, you may get both, but only once. The rope creaks again, someone coughs, and slowly the crowd disperses. The gallows remain, they always do. A reminder carved not in wood or stone, but in silence. You return to the sea one last time, not for fishing, not for raiding, not even for escape. You go because there are questions only the waves know how to ask, and if you're lucky, you might hear one whisper back. The sand is cold beneath your feet. The tide is low, the air thick with salt and memory. You stand where the water meets land and stare toward the horizon, where everything begins and ends. You think of them all. The boy who whispered secrets for a taste of importance. The half-brother with polished boots and empty promises. The skald whose words wounded deeper than blades. The woman with eyes like smoke who turned affection into a trap. The gods, silent and watching, maybe laughing. You think of betrayal not as a moment, but as a story. A saga with no true beginning, no real ending, just a pattern. Because if there's one truth you've learned, it's this. Everyone is capable of betrayal. Even you. Especially you. And maybe that's what no one talks about. That every time you raise a toast to loyalty, some part of you wonders if the person beside you means it, or if one day they'll carve their name into your back instead of your memory. The wind tugs at your cloak. You don't resist. You let it remind you. Even stone wears down with time. Even oaths fade. Even blood dries. But the stories? The stories never die. Historians still argue whether Viking betrayals were rare or simply well hidden behind bravado and bone-carved honor. But you've seen enough to know that honor is a performance, sometimes sincere, sometimes convenient. You think now of one final tale. A man named Brander, unknown, unremarkable. He never betrayed anyone, never lied, never stole, never failed. But no one remembered him. No songs, no stones, no whispers. And that too is a kind of tragedy, because perhaps worse than being known for betrayal is being forgotten completely. You kneel by the shore. You pick up a stone, smooth, black, damp. You carve a single line into it with your knife. Not a name, not a curse, just a mark. You place it on the sand and walk away. It's not for anyone else. It's for you. Because the next time someone asks, why would anyone dare betray a Viking? You'll have an answer. Not a clean one, not a proud one, but a true one. Because betrayal doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from within. From fear, from hunger, from love, from gods, from the same place loyalty does. And maybe that's the real fear. Not that someone will betray you, but that, given the right moment, you might betray them first. The fire has burned low now. The longhouse is quiet. Only the soft crackle of embers and the gentle hush of the sea remain, breathing in rhythm like an old, familiar lullaby. Outside, the night wraps the world in a thick, dark quilt. Inside, your thoughts settle like dust after battle. You've walked through cold halls and colder hearts. You've stood in judgment, felt the heat of suspicion, the weight of silence. You've learned that betrayal is never loud at first. It's a whisper, a glance, a hunger. But you've also seen loyalty, raw, earned, carved into blood and shield wood. And maybe that's what matters more. Not that betrayal exists, but that it doesn't win. Not always. You stretch. Let the tension melt from your shoulders. Let the stories slide behind your eyes, their sharp edges dulled now by time and quiet. Let the sagas fade from speech into stillness. Because the dead are resting. And so should you. Your breath slows. The world softens. Nothing chases you now. Nothing demands your decision. You're not a warrior tonight. You're just a soul, safe in the dark, listening to the last of the fire's voice. So, sleep now. Let the cold stay outside. Let the oaths sleep beside you, and let the stories keep watch. Because in the end, the only betrayal that matters is the one we allow to haunt us. And tonight, you've let it go. Sweet dreams.